Well.
What's up, PJ?
Well, you know the name of the game. What's going on?
Long time no see.
It's been a few days, I'll tell you that. Oh, is my mic too loud? Sorry about that. There you
go. I didn't think so.
Oh, you didn't think so? The compression's kicking in.
Well, it could be.
It's all about mixers. It's all about... People like inconsistency. It's funny, before you and I went live, we were talking about the perfection of like top-end video studios and that type of thing, and how just people over the past few years have really pivoted from wanting like crystal clear, amazing quality content to like just a guy in like shorts and a t-shirt in his like living room playing his acoustic guitar live on Facebook type thing.
Yeah. In a lot of ways, I think that's kind of been the case.
Yeah, right?
I think the flip side to that, though, around the drumming industry, though, is like drum covers have gotten like uber, like a drum cover now needs to be so slick. It almost needs to be like a Hollywood production, literally. Like when you think
pops
about,
more.
Yeah. Like I think about when I first went on YouTube and first started seeing people like say Mike's Lessons or stuff like that. It was very like in the infancy of YouTube. So it was like a camera, on a side shot and just like ambient audio. And I mean, now it's just in this short span of time that it's taken YouTube like not long to, sort of adapt themselves to creating, basically kind of celebrities in a lot of ways.
Well, I think the technology is just so accessible. It used to be you had to go in a recording studio and actually like 2-inch tape, and I'm dating myself here, but you actually had to do that. Yeah. And now you can just get an interface and record your album at home. Yeah. But I think it's the age long. The question is what's the definition of perfect? What's the definition of quality? Right. If and I'll be honest, a lot of the time I'm just listening to tunes in the car, and I'm like, it's just utility. I'm just listening to the tune and listening to the song. Yeah. But I can't think. We talked about this with Liberty on the last stream on Saturday. I can't think of the last time I actually sat at with a record player, cigar, cognac, recliner, and listened to a production and listened to music. Can you think of the last time you did something like that?
Last weekend.
Oh, tell me more.
Oh, literally! I've just recently purchased a turntable, and I had a nice Cabernet Sauvignon, and I found a good cigar shop.
You're not joking. The joke I just made, did.
I did it. I've totally been craving that. I've been watching. So now this is a thing on YouTube, is vinyl DJs that spin. And they basically do their show on YouTube, and
of course,
which I think is fantastic. And I know a lot of people hack on them because there's been some copyright issues, but the reality is that's kind of only the fault of the publishers, because if the publishers were on it, this is a great way for artists who say like, artists say even that have like chess records. Some of these DJs spin old chess records. They spin 45s. So some of these old artists could be getting some royalties here, because if their publisher caught up with this, you could give permissions and YouTube could be paying them out for all the ad revenue they'd be making. I follow some of these DJs, and they do such a great job of the mixing. It's kind of hypnotic when you're listening to it. It's, and there's a person on screen, and you could totally be giving someone, another paycheck that hasn't been getting one in 20, 30 years, right? So the comments about, copyright, it's like, that's not their fault. It's totally the publisher's fault for not keeping up with the technology.
Do we think, and sorry, I keep hearkening back to Liberty's stream, but we did talk about the music business a lot. And is there more weight on people to learn about copyright and
I think you have to
strike prevention now? It's certainly heavy with YouTube. It's heavy with Twitch.
Well, and even
worth discussing, right?
Even what can be copyrighted. When the beginning of the pandemic hit, my wife and I had been recording an album, and so we didn't stop per se, but we were going to go into a studio, so we had to kind of do it in our house. But we also, at that time, Berkeley Online gave a bunch of classes away for free, and one of them was the music business classes.
Yes.
And you live in downtown Vancouver.
I live in downtown Vancouver. Sorry, there's bikers driving by all the time. Sorry.
But one of the good thing the truckers aren't coming by.
That's a good point. Loud.
One of the things that I learned in these free classes was up until 1985, and artists were not aware of this, there was still a percentage taken off the royalties for breakage. And that goes back to before vinyl.
Of course.
And you're talking CDs, breakage is minimal. But the amount they were taking off was ridiculous for how many CDs actually broke.
Of course.
Or, you know what I mean? Like, so it was just this. It's
I
always
wonder if the definition of breakage changed into promo
no, it didn't, because it just never got addressed again, and it was just based on the old I forget what they made the records out of before vinyl, but the acetate, I think it was, or something, that they broke easily.
Gotcha.
And then even with vinyl, they stopped breaking. The breakage went down substantially, but the amount they were taking for breakage was just unruly, and it was just because artists simply didn't know. This is an old thing that we haven't changed, and we need to address it. And I think the same could be said now about YouTube. And you think about it, there's so many ways for older music now to get out to the masses, especially the fact that 80% of music that's being distributed is catalog music now. It's not new music.
Very true. Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
So there's lots of opportunities for these artists to get in and kind of cash in on the success of like vinyl. I mean, like, open the channels and let them have. There's one guy, I think he got shut down for copyright, but if these publishers caught up, he'd have been streaming. He'd have been paying these guys and gals single-handedly tons of royalties, because he has like 10,000 listeners. They're the new DJs.
Yeah, I would argue that the moment that the ban hammer comes down, people react quick and move from platform to platform to places that have more lenient copyright, right?
Yeah.
So you kind of want to educate. I'm a big fan. Funny enough, our guest tonight is a huge educator, but I think that education on topics, education on current affairs will ease people into the new horizon, if that makes sense, as opposed to just scaring them. They don't understand it and they just want to move on to the next, right?
And it takes a while, right? Like it takes a little time for the industry to catch up to the technology.
Yeah, you got it.
Incidentally, our guest's wife used to work in television.
Oh.
Much like I did. Actually, almost the same job, I think. I think we talked about that at one point. But
maybe we mentioned that in a bit.
Save for stream, as we say.
You save for stream. Edward's here from Atlanta. Hey, buddy. And Loss in the house from South Florida.
Oh, Wonder Drummer. Welcome.
He's waiting to be inspired by
or she.
Global
we don't know who it is.
Oh, true. I'm sorry. Yeah, you're absolutely right.
He or she.
Waiting. Yep. Hasn't been inspired until this stream. This is where Dom gets to go full force and inspire everybody.
We've turned the sensors off.
We've done it. Yeah. This is awesome. Well, do you want to cut to the chase, I think is the term?
Yeah, I think you always like to introduce our guests with a question. I love when you do that.
Oh, thank you. I'll do this. I'll do one better. I have a quick story.
Okay.
That about the first time that I met our guest, and I can see him in the wings right there. So we'll see if we can get him to smile a tiny bit here. We'll see. We'll see how this goes.
He barely smiles. I mean, my God.
This story has kind of molded over many a year. Anyways, okay, so back in the day, I would say maybe the early 2000s, I moved from Toronto to Vancouver here, and I started working at a music store called Tom Lee Music. That's where I started working. And shortly after that, they brought back the drum festivals that were happening on a fairly regular basis throughout the 90s, my understanding was. And I forget who the headliner was. I feel like it was Billy Cobham that weekend. But I do remember Chad Smith was there because it was his birthday, as a matter of fact. Oh my God, that core memory just popped in my head. It was his birthday, and our guest went out and gave him a cake during his clinic. So after the big weekend on probably the Sunday night, we were tearing down stuff, and everybody was getting ready to go for dinner. And our guest, which I'll say his name, Dom, taps me on the shoulder, and him and I may have exchanged a few words. Yep. Sorry. I do have to say the few words that we did exchange is he came down to the drum department, and I said, "Mr. Famularo, it's nice to meet you." And he said, "That's my dad." That's my dad. And I, in my head, thought, "Oh, I've got the wrong guy then." Sorry. Oh, sorry. And then I walked away. I was like, "Oh, it was nice to meet you," whatever. And I walked away. And then everybody was still talking to him, and that was when it clued in. Oh, he said a joke, and I was too dumb to figure it out. But it was a great joke that obviously everybody, including myself, used forever.
You ghosted him.
I ghosted him, but I actually thought that maybe he was Mr. Famularo's son, and Dom was somewhere upstairs getting ready for. Yeah, Dom's still walking around. I'm like, you look suspiciously like him, but I'll assume that you're telling me the truth. So, anyways, on the Sunday night, we're packing up. We're getting everything ready to go. And Dom taps me on the shoulder and goes, "Hey, what are you doing after this?" And I'm like, "Oh, I'm just going down to the coffee shop to meet my wife. She's finishing work." And Dom said, "You and I are going to go down and have a coffee." And I was like, Billy Cobham, like everybody, all the manufacturers, everybody was going out for dinner. But I was just a worker there. I'm just a guy hanging around doing my thing. And he was like, "Yeah, let's go, you and me." I was like, "Yes, absolutely. Let's go." Nice. So him and I went down to the coffee shop just down the street. There was a Blends down the street, and we hung out for maybe an hour. And man, his book had just come out, if memory serves, the Cycle of Self-Empowerment. And he gave me a copy of that, which was great, signed it. And we just talked for a long time about motivation, about self-improvement, just the challenges, the tribulations of being in the music industry. Like, it was all great. And I had an hour of his time. And I really appreciated it because, as you know, I'm super high energy. Sorry, this story's going along, but you get it. I'm super high energy. So Dom and I connected right away. My wife shows up and she sits down, and Dom and I are just like revved up talking to her. And I got to preface it that my wife is introvert, social anxiety sometimes. Like, she's very quiet. And I love her for that because we balance each other out. But we spent another, I want to say about a half an hour or so talking to Dom. And as we left, I was all revved up. I was like, "Dom, oh my God, that was amazing. Thank you so much for your time." I left. And I remember my wife turning to me and just going, that guy was loud, and that guy was a little much for me. It was a little too much for me, is what my wife said. So she wasn't completely in your court there, Dom. You and I were probably a little bit more revved up than we needed to be. But I guess my question is, as I'm bringing in the most amazing educator, drummer, writer, motivator, Mr. Dom Famularo, could you tell me a bit about how do you deal with maybe some people just don't get you? Here we go, Dom. Long story?
First of all, PJ, your wife could very well be my wife. She doesn't get either. So this is totally nothing new in my life as far as meeting people who are overwhelmed, or they think I'm putting on an act, or they think that I'm just trying to be extroverted for whatever reason. So I mean, this is who I am. So either you accept me for who I am and we have a fun in this journey, or they don't accept me. I mean, I cannot change to please everyone. I have to be happy and positive and lead my life in the most loving way I can. And if I meet people that don't align with me, I wish them the best and I move on.
Yeah. Perfect. And I think it's very clear, and it kind of goes into my next thought along those process is it's very easy to harp on the negativity or harp on the haters, you know what I mean? And I feel much like myself, you let that slide off your back a bit, or how do you deal with some of that right away?
Well, first of all, gentlemen, it's great to be here, and it's great to have
geez.
This is great to be here and have this kind of an opportunity. So I thank you so much. Yeah. And it's kind of interesting, guys. I mean, I am blessed, have been blessed with a life that has allowed me to travel to over 60 countries. I have performed and with some great musicians in my life. I have had the opportunity of meeting some of the greatest musicians in the world, both in me knowing them as personal musicians and me interviewing them for the sessions panel.
Yep.
So in my life, the way it is, I've realized that there's this short amount of time that we have on this planet. So I'm going to maximize the most I can. And if I waste an opportunity because of a negative thought, then I am the fool. So I do not go down that path. And if someone is a naysayer or doesn't believe in what I'm doing or feels that the sky is falling, so be it. That's how they live in their lane of their life. My lane is way to the far side, and it's the fast lane because of the opportunities that I have in traveling around the world. Teaching, I mean, I've got over 3,000 students. Today alone, I taught students from like 5 countries, and I started with my first student at 9 o'clock in the morning from India. So when you have that kind of a life, that when the evening comes upon, like now, and I think back of just what I did today, then when I think about what I've done in the past week or month, and then in my lifetime, this is a roller coaster ride that either we appreciate and enjoy the ride or we complain about the ride. I'm not going to complain. I'm having too much fun.
Man, you are you said a lot there. You've done a lot even just today alone.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So given the state of Earth, how has your connection with people changed? Let's even just say this week alone. Obviously, you're doing a lot more Zoom. You're connecting with people that way. But how does that feel for that type of connections?
It changes at every moment. I'm working on my second book, which is a follow-up to the book that you mentioned, The Cycle of Self-Empowerment. And the book is called Owning Now. So I believe that my responsibility from my life is to just be in this moment as much as I can all the time. Now, this takes practice. This is like learning an instrument. You got to practice at this. Well, now having practiced it for many, many years, I started playing drums professionally at the age of 12. I started teaching at the age of 17, and I am now 68 years young, having the most fun globally reaching people. So each moment to me has to be magnified in the wonderful blessing that it is. So today alone was an interesting day. I mean, India, China, Germany, I think there was a student in Canada today, the US, and Australia.
Wow.
That just today. So my communication has to adapt and understand the time zones that I'm in, the different language barriers, and that we're focused on one task, that we share the same passion of music. And that at some point in my life and my students' life, at some point, each of us said at a different time, I want to play the drums.
Right.
I've got to understand that connection. I've got to understand that feeling. I've got to fuel that passion and guide this person the best way so they can find a higher sense of enjoyment from their ability and their talent. And that's the connection that we do together. And that is an incredible, incredible ride.
Yeah.
It is. The story I told resonated heavily. Anytime I think of you, I always think of that moment that I met you. But I think that it's valuable and characteristic of you that when you speak to a large group, you're not just speaking to the other drummers in the room. You're speaking to the people in the back. You're speaking to the parents. You're speaking to the janitorial staff in the building. You're trying to touch every single person in the building. And I think that's what kind of makes you different. Do you feel that weight of and excitement being able to do that, I guess?
I do, guys. And I feel that it's a weight, but more than a weight, I find it a responsibility.
That's better.
If I've been chosen to be on that stage, I've got a responsibility that I've got to use all of my resources and skills to lift people, to inspire them. And when they leave my presence from that session that I'm conducting, they have to walk out there saying, I've got a plan. I'm going to do something better. I'm motivated. It's the line of inspiring people to aspire.
Right.
Inspiration is to inspire one. Aspiration is when the person inspires themselves. If I can inspire someone to inspire themselves, to inspire someone to aspire, this is huge.
Yes, that's the quote.
Huge.
That's the quote.
That's the purpose of life. I was just asked, there was an interview for a magazine. They asked me, they said, Dom, I've got a very deep question that I want to ask you. And the question was, for you, what's the essence of life? Now, I know this is a deep question and it might be a long answer. And I said, not really. I said, for me, the essence of life is to matter, to make a difference. That's it. So if I'm on that stage, my responsibility for me is to matter. That's the journey and the short time that we have in this life, which is what the book Owning Now is about. Realizing we only own the moment. What can we do with this moment? Much like this conversation right now. Can we speak about conversations and discussions that will lift the listener up, whether they're listening to us live or whether they'll listen to this in 5 or 10 years, or when they hear this when I'm long gone.
Right.
Will it lift them up? That to me is the journey.
There you go.
Oh
my God, Dom, I love your energy. Somebody says there. I love it.
I have, that actually speaks to my meeting Dom story, which happened pre 2000, actually pre Y2K. It was in Regina, Saskatchewan, of all places, and Dom was with Rod Morgenstein of I think Dixie Dregs and many other bands. But Dom had been speaking, and of course that was shortly after the birth of your first son. And I think about we're of course when we were going to interview you, and now all these years later, I now have a son, and one of the biggest, I've always believed this, teachers appear to you in the most unusual forms, and my son has become one of my biggest teachers, and especially around the being in the moment thing, because I've recognized that my inability to be in the moment often creates that headache that parents feel with their kids, and they think their kids are being a certain way, and the reality is it's not. The kid is in the moment, you're not. You're either living in the past or you're living in the future, and they're right there in the moment, and that's why you have such a problem. I just wonder now, Dom, that now you've had 3 boys, what lessons do you think were the most important to you now that you've seen them grow? One is married or going to be married very soon. What are the biggest lessons you've taken from being a father now to 3 young men who now are going to go and probably have their own families?
It really is amazing, Sean, that as I witness, having met you and then of course knowing your wife Jill, and having just been, I admire you as a couple. You guys make a great couple. Having a child and then being blessed with now the bringing up another child. Yes. This is what we are here on this earth for. Yeah. I believe that. A couple things. We are all humans on the same level of respect. I don't care what country you're from. I don't care what color you are. We're all on the same level. I don't care how much money you have or how much money you don't have. We're all on the same level. We're all on this rock and we're floating through the universe. And the universe is infinite. I can't comprehend infinite. And then all these scientists are saying the universe is expanding. I can't comprehend the universe, and now I can't comprehend infinite is expanding. So I've got to say, I'm only here for this short speck of time. I've got to make the most of it. So having my family, first, I must say that my wife is my greatest teacher. She's constantly teaching me new ways of thinking and new understandings, which has been an absolute blessing. And the fact that now I've got these 3 wonderful boys that are 23, 25, and 27, and growing young men, probably my greatest lesson is that they continue to teach me to be in the moment, to be in the now. Everything is right now. Someone that has deep regrets in life and is sorry for what they did is living in the past. They're constantly regretting what they did in the past. Somebody who is anxious and always worried of what's going to happen is someone who's living in the future. A person who is truly at peace with themselves is living in the now. My boys live in the now, in the moment right now. Let's just make the most fun that we can have right now. This is absolutely fantastic. Do they prepare their life and prepare things for the future? Absolutely. But it is the moment that has the most magic.
Cool. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, that's awesome.
You got me thinking deep on that. Yeah.
I'm gonna take a little breather, and we're gonna
bring
Jill in a second here.
Going to get his other
See you
half.
in a little bit.
Sounds good. Go for it. It's Dom and I now. It sounds like your wife is exactly the same as my wife. And how do we motivate them to, how does that balance occur? Right. I guess is the bigger question.
Good point, PJ. I mean, I think what happens is, it really is, I guess it comes down to respect. How to understand how to respect somebody and their beliefs and what they believe in. If somebody has, deep beliefs in a religion and that's their beliefs, I respect that. I may not agree with it and I may not believe in it. And I have to learn how to respect it. And that's why I think the world is so divided right now. People have such strong opinions that their opinion is only right, and they don't respect anyone else for having a different opinion. I think that's the biggest challenge we are in right now, that people just think that they are so righteous and that what they think and what they feel is correct. And if we don't align ourselves with their thoughts, then we are not good people.
No. Super interesting. Are you, since we've moved over it to be very digital at this point, and you're very in the moment with a person face to face, you can read their reactions, you can be with them. How have you changed your landscape of how you connect to people digitally over the past few years? Because you're fueled by humans, my friend. I feel it, and I feel the same way. We've had to change our ways. How have you adapted?
Well, whether I'm with that human in person or whether I'm with you right now, I'm still with you. It's just a different vehicle that we're using. So I'm not concerned about the vehicle. I'm more concerned of where we're going. So I don't care whether I'm on my bicycle, I'm walking, I'm running, or I'm on a car or a bus, a train, a plane. That doesn't matter. It is in the destination that I'm going to that's going to have the greatest value. So to me, on programs, on whether it's Zoom or whatever I use now with teaching, I'm relating to people. I've got some great relationships with people who I have never met in person, but I know them really well. I can feel what they're feeling. We're working on different growth process in the drumming world. And some of my lessons are consultation or coaching lessons where it has nothing to do with drumming. It's totally about, just that person's desire of how they want to talk. But, I have got some people that I'm doing coaching sessions about my book. It has nothing to do with music. They're not musicians, and they're looking for just a better way of, in my book, trying to find out how they can empower themselves. And I tell them I'm not a professional psychologist. I said I'm not trying to do anything more than just share with you my experiences in my positive and happy way. And if you can latch on to some of that and that can inspire you to aspire, we both win.
Totally. Do you feel, I love that. Do you feel like you've certainly been doing a lot more interviews? We talked about Modern Drummer, but you've been doing a lot of interviews, and especially with drummers that you already know, obviously. But do you feel like you've gotten to know some people even more because you're the guy kind of asking poignant questions? Have you learned more about drummers now?
Oh boy, I really have. And not just drummers, because the Sessions panel, which is the YouTube channel that I am involved with, where we have over 350 interviews. It's the Sessions panel on YouTube. I ask everyone to go there, watch the interviews, and subscribe to it, because I've had the opportunity of interviewing the greatest drummers in the world, the greatest bass players in the world, the greatest guitar players. And I had the chance to sit down with Chick Corea and interview him, Steve Vai on guitar, Steve Gadd, Vinny Colaiuta, Billy Cobham, Stuart Copeland on drums, Harvey Mason. I mean, my gosh. And many of the drummers are no longer with us. I had the chance to sit down with Jabbo Starks and Clyde Stubblefield, the two drummers from James Brown, and interview them both together. That interview is one of my favorites. Both of them together in the room. And it was a few months afterwards that they both passed away. It was their last interview that they did individually or collectively. And to see the respect that they had for each other, and how they were able to play together with two drummers on stage. There was a magic with them as people, and you could sense how the magic worked in their music. So I've had the chance to meet these wonderful musicians and absolutely get to know them and get to understand more about how they all developed the careers that they have and how they maintain it. Very, very interesting, those interviews.
Before I bring Jill in, you're kind of hitting a question that I've been curious about. Do you fanboy? Is there anybody you've met or spoke to where you're just giddy and excited to chat with them and get to know them?
PJ, everyone, and now
sure.
Now I'm doing it with you. Absolutely. To me, I'm a fan of the fact that here you are, and yourself and Sean and soon Jill, coming in. You put this energy together with Drum Geek. You're putting the message out. You had Lim DeVito on, who is a dear, dear friend. He did a great, great job. And here you are doing this. I'm a fan of what you guys are doing. So everyone that I interview or talk to, I really have that enthusiasm that this is going to be a fun journey for this moment.
Killing it. Well, let's bring in Jill. Let's team her up here.
Okay.
Jill.
Hi.
Hey, you're not Sean.
I hate guys.
You're Jill.
No, I'm not Sean. Although I don't know where to look. I feel like the Brady Bunch. I feel like
that's actually true. You just stare at yourself, just like any other Zoom meeting. You just stare in your own eyes.
Right, off to the side.
That's exactly. Oh, Jill, good to see you, by the way.
Good to see you again. I hope you are well.
I am well, and I'm so pumped to be here to see you and Paul. Hi, Paul.
Hey, good to see you.
I saw you like an hour ago, but hi again.
That's true.
This is so exciting for me, and you guys are speaking my jam. I just couldn't wait to get on here. The power of now and owning now and mindset and passion and magic. Dom, you said it. And when I was talking to Sean about possible questions for the show, he said, "Well, why don't you get on there and talk, because you seem to be really passionate about this." And I thought about that to myself, and I said, what is it about Dom? Because I'm not a drummer. And I know you guys spoke to this a little bit already, but I wanna go deeper into this magic, Dom. What is it that you figured out that inspires people like me who aren't following drums or drumming to go home and practice? Like I'm just jacked after I see you, and I never miss you when you're performing your clinics. I never miss it. So, and I know a lot of non-drummer friends who would agree with me. So what is this magic? I know you said owning the now, but let's go deeper, because our fellow clinicians are watching and they're like, what has he got that I want?
Yeah. Absolutely. Let me go deeper, and I will. When you talk to comedians and what makes them want to make people laugh, most of the time when you talk to them, they've had a very difficult and challenging life. They've been dragged through the mud. They have been depressed, and they are trying to use this as an outlet to remove those negative challenges that they've had, to bring the light to people. It's not much different from my life. And what makes me happy, I've had tremendous sadness in my life, and I have had many, many challenges in my life. My eyes have always been a challenge. So trying to see clearly without glasses. I was 8 years old when I finally got glasses, and I couldn't play with people. Then when I got glasses, people called me Four Eyes. I had a tremendous stammering challenge, and people just made fun of me all the time. So to me, it was like, I used music as my springboard to bring me to a higher level of self-esteem. So life has not been easy. It has always been a challenge. Even in my life, in my adult years, I've had, tremendous challenges that have happened that have attempted to pull me back. So I've had to learn how to see the positive side of each moment, to be blessed with the people that are in my life now, because they may not be in my life, and to be blessed with the life that I have, because I only own now. Yesterday is gone. Tomorrow may never come. Listen, we don't own tomorrow. Hell, I don't even own later. I can look out of my studio now towards my house and drop in the snow, a freaking heart attack. Who the hell knows how to predict any of this? So I've got to make the most out of each moment so I can squeeze life and really enjoy this journey that we're all on.
Oh, I love that so much.
Yeah.
What about you, PJ? You love it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. as somebody who studies, like, I really enjoy the psychology of like connecting with humans, and we've certainly talked about it. I really love the interaction of humans, why people act the way they act, how people communicate with each other, the different types of communications, how you can influence emotion just with the words in which you say. Dom is kind of a prime example. I think you said it right. He's unlocked the higher methods of doing it, and with all due respect to Dom, there are a handful of people on Earth that have that skill as well, right? And you'd say Tony Robbins, of course, but like Gary Vee, but I think about people that really motivate you to be you. And whatever you is something you need to figure out. But you need to be on the adventure, excited for the adventure of trying to find that out. Does that kind of resonate, Dom?
It sure does. And you know what I realize is that I am flawed. I am a flawed human. I am trying to work on my flaws every day. Some days I succeed better than others. But I'm not trying to impress anybody. I'm not trying to win people over. I am just being who I am. And if in that line, look at this here, the huge asset that Dom has is he listens to people instead of trying to impress them.
There you go.
Great line. Yep. Wonder Drummer, thank you so much. And in my interviews, when I ask the question and then get out of the way. So as I'm interviewing that person, they have the chance to deliver their message on how they want to deliver it. It's not about me. Even in this conversation right now, it's not about me. It's about all the people that are listening. It's about PJ, yourself, and Sean and Jill. You know, you guys are putting an energy together that's allowing people to, from their confines of their own home, to listen to these words and hopefully be inspired to aspire. This really is fantastic.
Man. I have one. Sorry, Jill. Just on the heels of that, you kind of hit a really good note there, Dom. I always wonder about setting boundaries and challenging yourself to sometimes say no. Sometimes you do have to say no. Do you find that a challenge, or have you taken confidence that in your nose? Confidence in your nose. Does that make sense? There you go. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think more than confidence in my nose, it's saying no, because if I feel I cannot deliver, that will not be fair to the other party. So to be respectful to that party, I have to say no, because I really cannot deliver what you're asking. That's either not in my wheelhouse, it's either not music that I enjoy playing, or it's not a business endeavor that I feel I can really believe and give you 100%. So therefore, it's best that I say no, just for the fact that we don't destroy the relationship by me saying a bad yes. And then
so good.
Yeah.
No is not necessarily a bad response. Sometimes it's a very mature response to be respectful to the other party.
Absolutely valuable. Saying no, mature response, and respectful of the other party. That resonates heavy with me. Yeah. Well done. Yeah. Well done. Yeah. Sorry, Jill, go for it. Yeah.
Yeah. No, you know what? We hit on something, Dom. Voice is something that's like near and dear to my heart. And you mentioned as a kid you had stammering. And I'm just fascinated because now you're known for your voice, and it just flows out of you, and it's big and it's resonant and it's inspirational. Talk to me about this. How did you work through and have your own unique, authentic voice finally come out?
There are many times tears of happiness when I think back of the young boy that was made fun of, that was teased, that was thinking clearly in my mind, but when I went to speak, I couldn't get the words out. And I just became so frustrated with who that person was that I was determined to overcome that challenge, where I put myself through reading newspapers in a mirror slowly. And if I did not correctly say something, I said it again many times until I had ownership of it. And I learned to chew my words as I speak. So I am, if you see my lips working, I am articulating every vowel and every consonant right down to the D at the end of the word, word.
You are.
If I can,
Toronto.
yeah, I feel if I can deliver that clearly to the listener, and I deliver it as clearly as a plate and a dish and a meal that person can enjoy. If they walk away and they didn't like what they heard or didn't understand, I then know it wasn't on my part. They weren't a good listener. So if I deliver it clearly and they walk away not knowing what was said, I get it. And there's the other balance is IQ and EQ. I would rather have a higher level of emotional quotient than intellectual power, just for the fact that people will remember, they won't remember what you did. They probably won't even remember what you said, but they'll always remember how you made them feel. That to me has the power.
Yep. Oh, that's so good. Oh,
That resonates hard. That's good.
It does. It does. There's actually a factoid out there in the world of voice that when you roll up on stage or you talk to a group of people, 55% of your effectiveness is body language, 38% is sounds that you're making, whether they're positive to the ear or not, and 7% is the words you say.
Yikes.
It's just amazing. So that, but you think about it, and Dom's amazing clinic, if it was read by Eeyore,
Right.
lost. So that body language and that nice job on the voice practice, Dom. You did it, son. You did it.
Hey, I'm still trying to improve what I do. And sometimes when I get tired and I'm pushing myself to a certain degree, I'll see elements of the stammering come back. And when that happens, it just brings me back to a younger age. And I just stop and say, I am not going there. So it really is something which is very personal, and as many different events in my life, those personal moments speak loud to me.
I would assume that those become lifestyle, that it's applicable to education, it's applicable to your drumming or learning a musical instrument, however, or learning a new language, because in essence, that's really what you were doing, was learning the English language in a very particular way. So it's like learning a language. You learn those skills, right?
Absolutely, and it's like the way I teach. I think the reason why I get so much success with my students, and it's not because of myself, it's because of the great education I had from these great masters, the Joe Morello, the Jim Chapins, the Shelley Mannes, and who their teachers were. When I think about the overall view of information that I have, when I narrow this down to a person, my responsibility as an educator is to find out what the person wants to achieve, what they want, and what I feel they need. When I kind of find that path and I find out what that student really is trying to achieve, and I narrow down the information to get to them so they begin to see the results, man, that is a ride that is so enjoyable when you see them light up and feel the rewards of this knowledge that they are applying it. They're seeing the immediacy of the results. Oh man, this is when the magic begins.
I don't want to take away from Jill if she's got another question, but I wanted to bring this up.
Oh, I'm so glad you did. And
Right?
you've never taken away from me. Never.
Oh, okay, cool. And sorry, it's a screen share, but this
Love it.
Dom, can you talk a little tiny bit about this chart, maybe?
Yes, this chart came to me literally in a dream. I was traveling around the world doing all these different clinics. And I was, before the pandemic, I was doing 10 to 15 countries a year. I mean, when you're traveling at that pace, I've got, just on Delta Airlines alone, I'm over a 2 million mile flyer. So when you travel at that pace, you are constantly taking in new information every second. So I finally, after my travels, I'm getting very similar questions from students about saying, boy, I want to play drums, but I'm challenged and I don't get support from my parents, and I don't know if I can do this, and I want to do this, and I believe in this. And I'm hearing this from all these different musicians from country to country, city by city, village by village, music store and festival by festival. So finally, I'm home for a couple of days, and in the middle of the night, I always have pen and paper next to my bed. In the middle of the night, I wake up and I see this graph in front of me. with passion at the bottom, a bunch of words in the middle. I wrote a couple of the words down. Then this arrow with a cycle going up to this dream and vision, and then coming down to passion, then going up the center into tools and goals. And I kind of charted this thing out, kind of looked at it, put it down, then went back to bed at 3:30 in the morning. Well, the next morning when I kind of got up and I looked at it, I started to clarify it. And I said to my wife, Charmaine, I said, take a look at this. What is this? She goes, well, I don't know. It looks like you have some kind of a chart that's got like almost like a flow chart to a certain degree that's got different movements. It goes circular, then it goes up the middle. And she said, what is it? I said, well, it's kind of like a cycle. And she said, a cycle of what? I said, well, I think if you're passionate, driven, and you're using these tools, which are words like, personality and, virtues and morals and ethics, heavy, deep words. And then you have outside words that build those up, like responsibility and perseverance and honesty. And then you have a plan. You can get to this dream and this vision if you really follow those directions. So I said, this is really kind of like, it just makes me feel better. It empowers me. So she said, it's like a cycle of empowerment. I said, well, it's more like a cycle of self-empowerment. And then she said, well, there it is. So that's how that came about. And then once I had that graph, then I wrote the book around that graph, building up this graph and putting it together. So it really just happened out of a need from what I was hearing from people around the world.
Very Doc Brown-like. I like it.
Yeah, really.
So are you saying, Dom, that the book was not even in your mind yet? This graph came through and then you decided to write a book?
Absolutely, Jill. Once I saw this, I realized, I said, well, maybe this could be used to answer the questions of what I'm hearing around the world. So then I began to start with building and pulling from this graph. So in the book itself, I speak about the beginning parts of it. Then I show the entire graph. Then I spend the rest of the book building up the graph of how it works and how it works for me and how it can work for other people and coming up with different concepts. And it really has been kind of a fun journey. And then this book now is leading to the next book called Owning Now. And Owning Now is kind of a follow-up of once you are self-empowered, now you have to understand what the moment means and how you can make the most of each moment that you are blessed with.
So the books, they work in tandem. Would you suggest to folks, if they haven't read them, to go start with Cycle of Self-Empowerment, followed by Owning Now? Or does it matter?
The answer is absolutely yes. You could probably read Owning Now first and pull something out of it. But much like even the books, the drumming method books that I teach, I may start with a book like Stick Control because it's the beginning book of hand technique. And then from Stick Control, I'll add, other books on top of that, because if I follow the path of these different books that are there, the path of those books will get you to where you want to go in a more of a concise and fluid way. Go out of order and try and learn some of these books. Like one student came into me and he brought in the book Master Studies. Master Studies was written by Joe Morello, and because I knew Joe Morello and studied with him, he wrote the book Master Studies as a follow-up to Stick Control and Accents and Rebounds. So when someone comes to me and says, Dom, I want to learn Master Studies, my next question is, have you been through Stick Control and Accents and Rebound? If they say no, I tell them, well, I think that's a better place to start, because if I start teaching in Master Studies, it's going to take you about 2 to 3 years to understand the book. But if I teach you Stick Control and Accents and Rebounds, we'll go through that in a few months. And then when you look at Master Studies, you'll go through Master Studies easier because you will have had the foundation of understanding the knowledge. Listen, knowledge sometimes is delivered to us, and we don't know what the hell to do with it, especially now with the internet, where there's so much freaking knowledge. I don't know where to put it all in my head.
It takes a guide to be able to tell you what the most logical route of that journey should be, because you've been on that journey. It's always the guidesman or the person on the riverboat knows that part of the river. You're just a riverboat captain. Oh my God, what a terrible. Sorry, dude, but yeah.
I love it. No, it's good. Don't apologize. Love it.
Absolutely. And if you think of it this way, if you think of it, wisdom, which is what I've always tried to achieve in my life, and I'm still striving to try to understand what being wise is. And wisdom is the combination of knowledge and experience.
Yes.
Knowledge alone does not make someone wise. It's just information. Experience is putting that knowledge into action. You learn from the action, which gives you experience. The knowledge plus the experience is what will give you wisdom. So if someone comes to me, if I give them the order that I know through my wisdom works for them to achieve what they want to achieve, and I know the key to get there, if they argue with me that they don't want to do that, then I must tell them, I'm not the teacher for you, because I don't want to be a part of a failed plan that my wisdom tells me will fail. It's going to take you too long to achieve what you want to achieve. I feel I can get you there faster. If you don't want to follow my plan, I wish you the best. Good luck.
Oh, that's so good.
Well done. Yeah.
Yeah. It's the best. It's the most of service you could be to that person to say no. Again, here we are for full circle.
Full circle.
Loving no's.
Yeah.
It's really funny. I've never went like this as often throughout an entire stream. I agree.
I do.
Wow.
So if I can jump in here, how did owning now come to you? Was it another vision?
It was, believe it or not, and I go back to my children again. Of the blessed gift that Sean had asked about what they gave me. I began my family at the age of 40, and when you start at 40, I was already well into my career, and I had already built a house and had it paid off. I wanted to pay a house off before I had a family, so I removed all that mortgage nonsense out of my life. So the house was there. So owning now came from whenever you're with a child, and my boys, and my wife is great at this too. We're only concerned about this moment now. When I have them all together, even now at the holidays, when they're all together, I just want to enjoy the moment that we're all together. I want to own that moment as much as I can. And with them, they all have that incredible zest of life that they just live in that moment. So to me, that was a moment that I began to see that we're really owning now. And you own now, because if you own now, you'll create a memory for later on that you'll go back and remember. Do you remember when we did this? That's owning now through a memory. I'm enjoying this moment again from a past positive moment. This is owning now to the square root. This is freaking huge.
I love you.
I can have that. Owning now came in where I said, I've got to understand owning the moment. So now here I am continually traveling through the world, again, before the pandemic. And now I'm thinking about owning the moment. So everyone that I met, I started staying in the moment more clearly. When you're in the moment more clearly, you remember that moment better. If I'm watching a TV show and I'm not paying attention, I'm not going to remember the TV show. If I'm glued to that show, I'm going to remember every scene and every dialogue. So that's how life is. I see life as this one giant movie flick that I happen to be a character in it. I'm not the main character. I'm just one of multi-billion characters on this planet. And these movie scenes happen in the different places that I travel to. That, to me, is like really appreciating every soul that comes into my life, where I can squeeze them like a true Italian, and I'm squeezing them to hug them, not to show them how strong I am, but to hug them so they can see that I am appreciative of their soul.
Oh, appreciative of their soul. Like, can you feel that one?
I'm going to elevate that just slightly with something that perhaps hasn't been addressed, is that dementia is something that is in my family in particular. And being in the now, owning now, is even more relevant for somebody who's suffering from memory problems or suffering from dementia, because they don't necessarily have the before or the after. The now is the most important thing. So celebrating now is the utmost importance when you're speaking to somebody with that. Does that make sense?
It makes total sense. And it was interesting for me because in my life, when I lost both of my parents, and I said I lost them in the fact that having them in my life was such a blessing. And my mother was as sharp as you can ever imagine at the age of 82. It was her body that deteriorated because of cancer. Her mind was sharp right up until that last morphine button was pushed to remove her from that pain. Crystal clear sharp. My father had the opposite. His body was incredibly strong, but he began to lose his mind through dementia or Alzheimer's, whatever, all these terms. Listen, it's old freaking age. He was in his late 80s, and he was losing the control of his mind. But he realized that at one point, that he said to me, the last year of his life, he stayed with me and my wife at our house, and he said, "I understand now that I'm losing it." So while he was still in control of his mind, he said, "I understand I'm losing it," and that's where he said, when he understood he was losing it, how he passed how much he loved everyone and told us all what he felt, and then literally day by day, he lost it more and more until he didn't know who we were.
Oh,
Sure.
So the owning of the moment came from both my mom and my dad. In fact, when I saw how they were passed on to this supposedly greater life, I hope that's where they are, they taught me how to really understand and seize the moment.
oh, I'm excited for this book, Dom. And I want, there's so much love on the chats and I want to get there, but I want to know when this book is coming out. And then Paul, I think we should, yeah. So Dom, when can I get my hands on this?
I'm working on it now, and I've got several chapters in the book, and I never force a book to happen. Everything I write, whether it's the drumming method book, and even Stephen Chamberlain was on here before, and Stephen knows that when I've written several books with Stephen, it's taken years to write the book. We go through it, we write it with all the books that I write, with Joe Bergamini, my partner with my publishing company. When we write books together, it's years of working and back and forth, experimenting and trying with students, coming back and forth. So owning now has the same learning process. Just as I'm having this discussion right now, this is also fine-tuning the book also. So when I go back to get to the book, when I'm inspired to get to the book, I only write when I'm inspired. If I'm inspired, that means every word I put in found its way from a higher purpose. It wasn't just a word I was trying to fill up a book. I don't care how long the book is. I don't care how many words there are. I don't care what, as long as every word is truly felt and put in place. So when someone's reading it, they can follow the path of personal peace. You know, I have my 5 P's that I use. My 5 P's. Let me get this over here. These are my. This is. I'll give you a little excerpt from the book.
I like it.
Yes.
I like it.
Get ready, everybody.
My 5 P's, and I put people on the effort where I tell them these 5 P's. The first P is purpose. Purpose. We have to understand our purpose in life. This is a very, very important word to understand, because without purpose, you're going nowhere. Purpose has to be, for me, the essence of life, to matter. As long as I can matter, I feel I'm driven with purpose. The second P is power. If I understand what my purpose is, I'm going to have the power to push forward so I can understand to move my purpose to a higher level. If I am purposeful and I have got the power, the third word is pleasure. If I can bring pleasure to people and to the world, I'm adding value to who I am at such a high level that it's exciting and it's rewarding. The fourth P is peace. I've got to be at peace with myself and try and bring peace to others. If I bring peace to others, I get pleasure. If I get pleasure, that gives me power. If that gives me power, I've got more purpose. The last P, number 5, is passion, because passion is the freaking fuel that runs the entire machine. If there's no passion, there's nothing. So passion has to be there first to give you the energy, to then understand, to have that peace, to understand where pleasure is at, to find the power, and then seek purpose. This, to me, how do I write this in the book? I don't know.
We need a video component to go with the book.
Yeah. Do you just sit in a room and just talk and have somebody just write it all down on a whiteboard for you?
Yes.
On my computer, when I get an idea, I write it in my phone into my notes section.
Yes.
It's owning now, and I've got several different note categories that I have. And then from the owning now categories in my phone, then I go to my computer and I start to expand on it. Then I talk to my family, and I talk to my oldest son, Dominic, who's a writer, and he assists me with certain things and kind of puts me in the right direction. And I keep on writing. And until I have all these chapters and all these notes that I've made into the book, then I'll have someone like my son to help me to organize it, to make sure it's in the right order. So when someone reads it, the message is delivered well enough. So that's kind of how I put it together. Really, I never, listen, I was not a good student in school. When I told my mother I was writing a book called The Cycle of Self-Empowerment, she said, "Oh, is this a drum book?" I said, "No, it's not a drum book. It's a book about motivation." She said, "Oh, interesting. So it's kind of like a book."
Yes. Yes.
My mom, at my mature ages, could turn this into a Sesame Street conversation.
That's exactly.
It was hysterical. I said, "Yeah, Mom, I'm writing a book."
A book.
When I
A
wrote
book, an adult book. It's an adult book versus a drum book. I get it.
Right, exactly right. And
we can't wait for it.
And she was so excited when the book came out, as my dad was too. And the fact that they saw that people were reading it and seeing the feedback from the book has been sold in over 30 countries. It's pretty amazing to see the reach that we can have as individuals if we just understand our 5 Ps.
Those are all top shelf words that just sometimes get underrated. People go for other words, or like it's just like your circle where it goes out into other words. But these are top shelf words that people should be putting in their vocabulary and using passionately or genuinely, I guess is the word.
And there are many other P's that could be added, but I started with these 5 P's because it's a place to start.
Yeah.
And not to overwhelm people. But there are many different ways in which we can adapt the commitment to make a higher quality life. I have to commit to myself that at 68 years young, I don't use the R word for retirement. Oh my God, that's like almost ridiculous in my life. I use the R word as reinvent. I'm going to keep reinventing myself for as long as I can until I no longer have the strength, mindset, or power to move forward. If I keep on reinventing myself, even at 68, there are some new paths I can go down that I think could also be purposeful and that could move people forward. That, to me, that excites me.
Yes to all of that. Reinventing is yes to all of that. Reinventing is uber important nowadays. By the way, if you have to go, Jill, hang out if you want. But
I'm going to probably switch. The husband's probably like chomping at the bit to get in here. I could stay here all day. But
yep. Well, that can happen
Mom
next
on
time.
duty.
Can you both stay?
Yeah, we can both bring them in. Bring them in.
Well, then our little one would be.
The baby. Take care of the baby. Sorry, Dom. The child is far more important than you.
But we'll be watching in the other room.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
But go ahead, Joe.
No, I'm just saying pleasure to be able to speak with you, and thank you, Paul, for letting me jump in and Yoko Ono this session.
No, not at all. Awesome to see you. And awesome. Joe.
Thank
you. You, Jill.
I'll take you.
You can hang me up, Paul, because I'm not technically.
I gotcha. Here we go. Thanks, Jill.
Bye.
Thanks, Jill. You hit it on the head, Dom. But it's always great to see Jill, by the way. That's awesome. Reinventing yourself. The modern world has changed, I don't know if you know, immensely. And how are you finding yourself, and I'm going to say this word, and I don't mean it disrespectfully, relevant to very young people who are getting into content creation with TikTok, with Instagram? Are you finding that audience has followed you up the chain in age, or how are you targeting those people? Does that make
what happens, PJ, is I find that as long as I stay valuable, if I stay valuable, that will make me relevant. Now, valuable means that I still offer things to the drumming industry. I still offer things to companies. I'm still teaching tons of students. And actually, this Friday, I'm giving my first drum clinic that I haven't given in a couple of years at a high school here on Long Island. And the Suffolk County music educators have put together over 100 drummers bussed in from different schools, and they're bringing them all in with masks and social distancing for me to do a clinic on stage and have over 100 young, aspiring students of our art form to witness a drummer in person during the craziness of this pandemic.
Yes,
we're going to pull this off, and I'm going to do it. And they're going to transport my drums there and set it up, and just like a regular clinic, and go there and talk and teach, and hopefully inspire. So to me, that now here I am at 68. I'm going to have all these young kids in the audience, and through the fun and enthusiasm of my playing, I'm hoping that inspires them. If that inspires them, they will see the value of who I am, hence making me relevant. Now, I'm involved in Instagram and Facebook and Twitter and TikTok. I'm involved in all that. I've got people helping me to post all this stuff. We post it up, we put it out, and I've got all these followers from around the world that are following my wonderful post that I put out. And it's got to be fun. It's got to be inspiring. It's got to be educational. It's got to have all those aspects to the post so I can engage these people and hopefully lift them from my posts. That's all I really want to do.
You hit it on the head. Being able to speak to children, being able to speak to kids, and let's be clear, you've elevated to the status of legend more than likely. Am I correct with that or no?
I don't think so. I don't like to go there only because
fair enough.
Yeah, and I say that with respect, Paul, because it's like when I hear legend, I get a little nervous about that.
Okay.
I'm still trying to figure out my life, and I'm still trying to figure out this drumming world. And when I think of people that who are I see as legends, the Billy Cobham, the Steve Gadds, those that are no longer with us, the Gene Kruppers and Buddy Richards and Max Roach and Elvin Jones and Philly Joe Jones, those guys, when I heard them play, they were like so far ahead of the curve of artistic expression. I'm just trying to figure it out.
Sure.
To me, I am an avid, honest student of the art form. And to me, I think I'd rather be known more as a student than as a legend. I think that to me inspires me more to want to push forward.
Respect. Absolutely. Let's bring in Sean. Hey, you good to go there, bud?
Yeah, of course.
There you are.
Yeah.
He's back.
I apologize. I am not near as good looking as my wife, but that's fine.
We agree with you on that full-heartedly. So
sadly true. Well, why don't
that actually leads me to one quick question, Dom, and we're definitely going to get to the chat questions. You said, Dom, you'd rather be known as a student than a legend, and so one of the things that I sort of do in my off time is I enjoy the martial arts. I enjoy like Muay Thai boxing, purely for entertainment and exercise purposes.
Sure.
But one of the things that I learned in Muay Thai especially is the respect a lot of the fighters have for each other when they fight in a true Muay Thai tournament. It's actually a ton of respect paid to the other person. That's the lead up to the fight, is how much respect you can give the other person. Yeah. And one of the belts in Muay Thai is a white sash with a black mark. And that's as high as you can get. And that is that you've gone from white belt, you've gone all through cycles, through all the belts, you've got to black, and then your belt turns white again because you have the mind of the beginner and the student, but you're marked with knowledge and information. And that's the scar on your belt. The black mark is the mark of knowledge. It's actually a blemish. They consider it a blemish, that you're not quite open as the beginner. So when you say that you want to be known as the consummate beginner, I can totally relate to that. I mean, a lot of the even some of the verbs or the passages that they have in Muay Thai that, they are constantly trying to attain this beginner's mind again, that it's so malleable. It's so, I haven't decided anything yet. There is no decision. It's the same as the story of the Chinese farmer. Everything that happens is neither bad nor good. You lost all your cows. That's a bad thing. Maybe, or maybe not. So I can see totally with regards to the way that you have especially inspired me over the years that, absolutely. I wouldn't, no disrespect, I wouldn't call you a legend. I'm like, Dom is the consummate student. I mean, he will teach you the things you didn't know.
Sure.
Well, I for sure have many blemishes and many scars in my life. There's no doubt about that for sure. But it really is a journey of knowledge where I always say I'm trying to attain the level of being childlike, but never childish.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's a good way.
I like just calling you a riverboat captain. You're going to be. Sorry, dude. You're river. Let's take a couple questions. Murray, good old Murray Creed.
Oh, Murray Creed, wonderful guy, man. Great player and great teacher. Nice, Murray.
What's a hobby of yours that we might find surprising?
a hobby of mine you might find surprising.
Oops, keep that up.
I love our little dogs. We've got little dog that my wife she fosters dogs, and she has found homes for over 55 dogs. And the little dogs that we have kept that are a part of our lives, I have absolutely fell in love with. They are such a part of my life. And I like just being with my little dogs and hanging out with them and playing with them. So it's something which is, to me, just an absolute joy of my life. It's very relaxing and very rewarding to give these animals that are all rescues that had no life before. They were lost, and now they're found. And that, for me, is amazing grace.
Cool.
Love it.
Cool.
Here's one from Edward.
Dr. Edward.
Mill. Yeah, from with Liberty. He has this question on Saturday. Do you have any stories or fond memories of Ale?
Oh, I have got hundreds of stories. That would have to be a completely another interview. And I've got incredibly fond memories of Al, as I do of Liberty DeVito. And Al Miller was a great mentor of mine who lived here in Long Island, who was very, very good friends with Buddy Rich. That's how I met Buddy, through Al. And that's how I met many, many different drummers through Al, Louis Belford and Elvin Jones and Max Roach. And Al was just such a wonderful spirit and such a kind person that's kind of how I learned this process of wanting to be kind and mentoring to people, because I had that with many great people in my life before me, not only my parents, but people like Al Miller and Liv DeVito, who's another dear friend who was just an incredible inspiration. His book, I think, is a must for everyone to have. I want everyone to go out and buy his book on hudsonmusic.com. You can go there and check down the book about Liberty has put together. And there's some great inspirational stories in that, and just following Liberty's life and how he went through the journeys of life. Absolutely incredible and inspiring. So I steal mentorship from every place I can.
Nice.
Liberty spoke. It was really good to speak to him last week, but one of the good things that I took from him was I was asking him about being an Italian, because I'm married to an Italian. What was the one recipe that kind of resonated when he was growing up? And he spoke about his mom's lasagna. Big fan of lasagna. Enough that this week I saw a lasagna that was 100 layers. A whole other conversation. But Dom, Italian, what recipe do you remember growing up with?
My family, being Italian on both sides, my father's family came from a little island called Stromboli, which is north of Sicily. It's got a big volcano on it. My mother's family came from a little town called Melito in the southern part of Italy in Reggio Calabria. So that we were really Italian from my grandparents, and my parents were first generation here, born in America. And one of the holiday recipes is what we call honey balls. It's this little dough ball that's soaked in honey, and it's a dessert that every holiday when it's made, my sister and my wife now make it. And when it's made, it just brings me back to my youth of my parents and my grandparents and our cousins and the big parties that we had at our house every Sunday. So there's comfort food, and every Italian dish, lasagna, Alfredo, pasta, you name, honey balls. There it is. And we don't do the sprinkles on them, but that's the honey balls that people have. And
wow.
and I've got a picture of them in my phone, because I go back to that kind of comfort dessert that we had. And all the food, my gosh, my mother's meatballs, the bergioli my grandmother used to make. My wife is an incredible cook. She learned the sauce from my mother, who learned from her mother. So we really enjoy the culture of Italian. I'm even working on getting now my Italian citizenship.
Oh, wow.
Wow. Any stories on your close friendship and association with Joe Hobbs? Oh, sorry.
Is it Hibbs or Hobbs?
Joe Hibbs, H-I-B.
Yes.
But
Hibber. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Yes, Hibber.
Yeah.
Joe Hibbs was, we lost him too soon about 5 years ago. I've got actually a picture of him on the wall of my studio here with one of his quotes in life, which was so powerful. And Joe was just a great spirit of a soul that knew how to bring people together. He knew how to find young talent. With Mapex drums, he brought people in, and those people have just become some of the greatest drummers in the world. Rashid Williams and all these great drummers that are playing Mapex drums have become legends in their own mind and in their own industry of what they've done. So they really have, out of the mind of Joe Hibbs, he's found some great talent. And he would call me every morning at 6 o'clock, every day at 6 o'clock a.m. because he knew I was up early when I mean every day, Christmas, New Year's, my anniversary, didn't matter. 6 o'clock, I got that phone call from Hibbs, and it'd say, what's up? What do you hear? What's happening? And we would talk and communicate and brainstorm these ideas. Then he'd go on and have his day, and I'd go on and have my day. But I missed those early morning calls.
Oh, man.
I can only imagine. Yeah, I can only imagine.
While we wait for a few questions, there's one thing that I'm very curious about. You are working with Can Do Musos.
Yeah.
Tell us a bit about what's going on here.
I am. This is an incredible organization. I ask you all to go to candomusos.com. And I am so proud of these guys. These are disabled musicians that have got some challenges that are greater than we can ever imagine. And I began to meet many of these musicians in the course of my global travels. I met Andy Hewitt in Sydney, Australia. And, David Siegel, I met him in my travels here in the New York area. And Mike Mignona, another young gentleman that was also a challenge. They were all drummers. And Andrew Hewitt, for example, was in line in a wheelchair at a clinic I was doing in Sydney, Australia. And so what I do is before every performance, I go out there and I shake everyone's hand before the doors are even opened up. So I walk down the aisle of whether it's 500 people or 3,000 people, as I've done in China. I go down and I shake everyone's hand. And I do that so I can get to know them and so they can have a little bit more closer contact with me because they're going to see me on stage and that's as close as I'll get to them. So I go there and I see Andrew's in a wheelchair and his wife was pushing him in the wheelchair and he was in line. And I said, fantastic. Tell me your story. He goes, well, I'm a drummer. I said, well, you're in a wheelchair. What happened here? He says, well, I'm a quadriplegic and I like to play drums and my wife helped me onto the seat and I get on there and I play. I said, man, what a great story. I said, boy, I'm so glad you came by tonight. And I hope you enjoy, the show. He said, well, I can't get into the show because I found out you're on the 4th floor and there's no elevator.
Oh, wow.
So I said, do you think that's going to stop me from getting you up those steps? I said, hang on a second. I walk down the aisle and I pick out of a lineup of people, 4 of the biggest drummers I can see. I said, guys, I need some volunteer help. I brought him over to Andrew. I said, guys, I want you to pick him up in the wheelchair and carry him up and put him in the room front row. They were like high-fiving. Absolutely, we're going to do this.
Nice.
We carried Andrew up 4 flights in the wheelchair. He was laughing hysterically. We get him up front row. Everyone comes in. We do the event. I played. We talked. We answered questions. At the very ending, I mentioned about Andrew, and I asked those 4 guys to stand up. I said, guys, would you please stand up for a round of applause? They gave them all a round of applause, and I said, gentlemen, while you're standing, we're not done. You got to get Andrew back down.
The job's not done.
They carried him down the 4 flights of stairs. So all of these people that I would meet like Andrew, I would ask them for their card or their email address and their name and phone number. And I gathered this here. So one day I said, there's something there that's got to happen. So Andrew was coming to New York, visited my studio. While he was coming to New York to visit my studio, I contacted David Siegel and I contacted Mike Mignona. So I had them all in my studio right where I am right now. I said, gentlemen, I know you all individually. I've met you in my travels. There's got to be an organization that we can do that can connect challenged musicians together to give them a voice in the world. We talked about it, and I said, one of the things that I'm so impressed with was that you have this can-do attitude. And the term muso came out because muso in Australia and in England is a term for a very serious musician. If you're a muso, you're a real serious musician. So I came up with the name Can Do Musos. I went right to GoDaddy, got the domain name. I said, now we have a domain name. We got to build a website. We got to get people involved. Now we have 355 members from 37 countries. And if you go to candomusos.com and click on the different flags and read the stories, if you're reading any one of these stories on any one of these members and you are not emotionally moved, you are freaking dead.
Yeah, exactly.
The stories are empowering. They're challenging. We put together a festival that we featured out. We're putting up our next festival for 2022 where we had them all perform. Our last festival was 2 hours long, and we put this festival together only so I can ask people for donations. You can go to Can Do Musos and donate because 100% of the money goes towards the organization to help us keep these people empowered.
Beautiful.
Crazy, right?
Beautiful.
This site is very, very concise. The stories are amazing. The photos, the engagement, everything about this is awesome. Obviously, the content is valuable, extremely valuable information that we should all be of.
And there's a video on the cover page on that page, which is called "Yes, I Can," and it was
What was the answer?
Yeah, it was a 2000. I think keep going.
Oh, sorry. Can do. Oh, there's some good stories.
Yeah, right there. Right there. No, go back down again. It's the swimmer with the hat. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, perfect. Right here. Yes.
And what that was from the Paralympics in the UK, a woman had called me from England, and she emailed me, and then I called her back, and she said, "I'm a TV producer. We're putting together a television commercial for the Special Olympics, and we want to use some of your can-do musos in the actual commercial. We're going to have some challenged sports people, and we're going to mix all this together with musicians and everything, and we want to put this together. They have some dancers that are amputees. It's an incredible 2.5 minute commercial about Yes, I Can. I ask everyone, go there and click on that and watch that, and all the musicians that are in there, the musicians performing, are all can-do musos.
Nice. Yeah. I've just posted the link into chat there so you guys can check that video.
Oh man, it's just so inspiring. It was a great commercial. That was really beautiful.
Oh man. Perfect. That, and then hipfire, just on the shoulder, just with respect to your time as well. I want to hipfire into one other thing here.
Another great cause, by the way.
Yes. I want to do this. Tell me a bit about this.
Oh, this is so huge. This came about. Having studied with Jim Chapin back in the late 1960s, I was able to meet his son, Harry Chapin. Harry Chapin was a singer and songwriter. His most famous song was Cats in the Cradle. And I had met Harry. Harry lived here on Long Island, not far from where I live. And just having met Harry, he was just this incredible energy of wanting to do something really, really good. So Harry, when he was traveling around the world with a hit song, he started to see certain cities that he found people that were just starving of not enough food. And he felt in the world that we live, there should be no one starving. So he started asking his people at concerts to bring a can of food when you purchase a ticket from me. So now he's putting on a concert, and at the end of the concert, he'd have 2,000 to 3,000 pounds of food in a big pile that he had to now find out what to do with it and how to distribute it. So he would call local homeless shelters, he would call police departments, hospitals, churches, and get all this food out. It took him several hours. Then he'd move on to the next city and do it again. He finally put together an organization called Why Hunger. And the Y stood for World Hunger Year. Hunger.org is an organization that feeds people out of the vision and brains storm of Harry Chapin. Harry organized this in 1975. He was able to get President Jimmy Carter behind it. There's a documentary now that I think is on Amazon Prime called When in Doubt, Do Something. It just came out last year, The Life of Harry Chapin. It's a very inspirational documentary. And I got a phone call from an old student of mine, Brian Resnick, who is now a lawyer in New York City, and he's a phenomenal drummer himself. And he said, Dom, now because of COVID, people are even starving more. I want to do something for Why Hunger in the name of Harry Chapin and Jim Chapin, who we also had taken some lessons with through my recommendation many years ago. So Brian donated $100,000 of his own money to get this thing started. That in itself was an amazing commitment. Once he made that commitment, I said, okay, we want to put together a video of a bunch of drummers performing that we can play to a song that we can then help raise more money. I'm in. So Brian and I produced this video. When you go to YouTube, type in Why Hunger Drum Together.
Posted the YouTube link to that song in chat, folks, so you can go there right now.
Great.
So as we had this call, they asked, what kind of song would we want? I said, I'd like to have a Beatles song. And right away they said, guys, you just don't get Beatles songs. I said, well, I want a song that's going to be recognizable. Well, through the context of Why Hunger and people that Brian and myself knew, we were able to get to the rights of Come Together.
Wonderful.
Just getting that alone was a huge hurdle.
Yeah.
come together. So now the first person I called was Steve Gadd, because I'm a firm believer. Once you get Steve Gadd to say I'm in, and no pun intended, I said Steve Gadd.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Once you get Steve Gadd to commit to something, everyone else falls in line like dominoes.
Yeah.
I called up Steve, told him what we did, 100 grand, why hunger, feeding people. Gadd said to me, I'm in. With that, I then called Vinny Colaiuta. I then called Dave Weckl. I then called Stuart Copeland. I then called Billy Cobham. I then called all these great, Nika McBrain, Chad Smith from the Red Hot Chili Peppers. Everybody said they were in. We opened up a Dropbox. We got the great arranger, Randy Waldman, who was an absolutely brilliant mind, to arrange this. And I said, Randy, the songs, I've got classical drummers, Brian, who knows all the classical drummers. We have pop drummers. We've got jazz drummers, funk drummers, soloists. So this chart has to weave through all of this using the theme of come together. Randy said, give me 2 weeks. He put together this arrangement that you're going to hear. He wrote the big band part where he needed a big band in the jazz section. We had 20 violins from Brian Resnick's wife, who's got an incredible violin school. All this came together. So what you're hearing is over about 160 plus musicians that were put together to play this. And through all of this, with the video being out, so far we have raised over $600,000.
Wow.
And still growing. So I ask everyone, when you watch this, if everyone wants to donate, they can donate on YouTube, or they can donate to whyhunger.org/drum. We got Russ Miller, the great drummer, to not only perform on it, but also he was the audio engineer to mix this thing. And then we got my nephew, Dakota Lupo, who's an incredible producer and video editor. He edited this together. And when you see the brilliant job of Randy Waldman's arrangement, Russ Miller's engineering, and my nephew's editing, this is a work of art that I am so proud of, that we've raised this much money, and the entire video is dedicated to the memory of Harry Chapin.
Awesome.
Sorry, this is resonating hard with me. If you didn't see, Schmilzy knows me. I know Schmilzy. And Cats in the Cradle, I grew up with Harry Chapin. My father got me into good music. We talked about it with Liberty as well. But Harry Chapin resonates heavy with me. All of his music, everything he did, his band, his songwriting, his stories, everything. Cats in the Cradle is kind of a theme song within my family in particular. My dad and I have sung it together for some performances. It's been absolutely amazing. And the funny thing is, I didn't know about this. So thank you, Don. Or Don, sorry, yeah.
How the song was written is Harry wrote the music. His wife, Sandy, wrote the words from her ex-husband, who was not involved with the children. So she had written down these words that she had realized that he was not doing, hence her divorce from him. She meets Harry. Harry takes on her children, and they have children together, and Harry was an incredibly loving person. And then when she shared this very personal note, Harry took those words and turned it into Cats in the Cradle about this past relationship that his wife had. So when you think of all the components to it, Harry was just, having known him, was just an incredible force of nature, as was his dad, Jim Chapin, who was another, force of nature in the drumming community. So I've been blessed to meet these people and hopefully be a small part of being a legacy of Harry Chapin.
What a great cause. Great story, great cause. Everybody needs to hit those links and explore. Everybody needs to be inspired to explore that.
Totally.
Wow.
And what's awesome to me, Dom, is that you don't often, I mean, not that it's never, but you don't often see, especially Kando Musos, especially for me, resonates because I was affected directly by my little niece she had a seizure and ended up having severe brain damage, and then one of my uncles was born with mentally challenged, and I mean faced a lot of hurdles, but interestingly, by the age of 10 he had a bottle collecting business and was in sort of in fear of having to hire people. He was that busy. He just was so driven, and it's funny when you think of someone disabled, and they don't like that term. It's not disabled at all. They're incredibly abled, and it's just a way that they think. And I remember my uncle Ken, he just had ways of doing things that was just like, oh man, I can't even imagine how you got around that hurdle. Like it just,
Absolutely.
you know,
And I call them differently abled.
yeah,
Yes.
totally differently
I don't
able.
like
Exactly.
disabled. I don't like handicap. I don't like
Yeah.
crippled.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
they're differently abled. And there are some phenomenal musicians that I have met on Can Do Musos. And
Yeah.
it's that feeling of just, meeting these great people and going through the world with trying to do something more than just our mere existence.
Yeah, exactly. Looks
Love it.
like Dr. Ed's got a question here for us.
Yeah, totally. Beat me to it. Nice.
Any plans for an upcoming live clinic in Atlanta? I hope so. If we can get past this pandemic and get to the point of air travel that can be easier. Right now, the airlines are having challenges because many of the people can't come into work because they have COVID. So the airlines are kind of confused where flights are being changed and delayed. But if there's a place that would want to host an event like that, I'd be more than willing to come down and spend a couple hours on stage and just talk and have some fun and play.
I love it.
I want to pivot away for a second if we can. Is that all right, PJ?
Go on. Tangents are great.
I had a question earlier, and I just I wasn't sure how to word it then, but I kind of know how I want to word it now. And it's just incidentally, when I went and sat with Jagger for a little bit, that's my son, who was having an issue with his little sucky toy, and that was a huge deal. So
I'm more interested in that story. If you could continue elaborate in that.
But
Please.
it's just the reality of being a father. So, and my question, Dom, is that so you and I have a couple things in common, and particularly, so your father and my father were both firefighters, and incidentally, then would have been brothers in the union of the IAFF, which is the International Association of Firefighters.
Yeah.
And your dad was quite a pioneer in a lot of things, and my understanding was there was something to do with a fire hydrant. The first fire hydrant in Port Jefferson was one of his accomplishments. What now that you're a dad, and I'm sort of seeing this now, certainly become appreciative of my father in a whole different way now that I'm a dad. What do you think is one of your biggest lessons that you can now now that you've lost your father, and you can say the biggest lesson that your dad sort of gave you or brought to your attention?
Well, it's funny that you mentioned that story about the fire hydrant, because it's from that fire hydrant story that I learned, having the energy to do what is right and believing what is right and let nothing else get in your way. The fire hydrant story was, my father was from a town called Baldwin. I live now in Port Jefferson, but the town that I grew up with was Baldwin, Long Island, on the South Shore of Long Island. And back in the 1960s, when he was chief, they would go to a hydrant, and when they went up the hydrant, junk would come out and bags and sneakers and just, clothes, and it would clog the hydrant. So my father went around when they went to a fire and they put the hose on and there was no water coming out, and they realized what it was. They put that fire out, and then my father said, listen, we're going to go around in Baldwin and we're going to open the fire hydrants and flush them out. So when we get to a fire, none of that junk will be there. So as my father went there, and they would do it at 2:00 in the morning, because that's mostly when people were not taking showers in Baldwin, so it wouldn't affect the water supply. And they'd open it up and let each hydrant run for a little while, and you'd see all this junk come out. They'd clean the junk out of the street, throw it out for garbage, close the hydrant, and go to the next hydrant. And as it was happening, my father realized that as they did that, certain hydrants had a different amount of pressure. He had a pressure machine that would hold in the force of the water, and it would tell him how much pressure. Well, if the hydrant was closer to the main, area of where the water was coming in, there was more pressure. If it was further down the loop, there was less pressure. So my father started to paint the hydrants different colors to know the pressure. White meant 20,000 pounds per square inch. Blue meant this, red and yellow. So now he knew when he got to a fire, that hydrant, he knew what the pressure was to know what truck to put in to get the most amount of water to put the freaking fire out.
Nice.
As he was opening up these hydrants at 2 a.m, the local authority and the water company noticed that there was an amazing amount of pressure that was being released at 2 a.m, every 2:00 a.m. in the town of Baldwin. So they sent somebody out that night. They saw what the fire department was doing, and they came up to my father and said, "Who's the chief?" My father was, "What you're doing is illegal." And my father, he says, if it's illegal, then you guys should be doing it because this is stopping us from saving lives. So you should be coming out or put a better drainage system, a screening system to not let this junk get into the waterway. Right. The guy said, well, that's not our responsibility. So my father said, well, my responsibility is to save lives. So we're going to keep doing this at 2:00 in the morning. Eventually, this turned into a lawsuit. So now the water authority of Nassau County, where this was, takes my father and the Boulder Fire Department to court. All the lawyers were there. They go into court now, and they wanted him to stop doing this. So they first go up and they present their case. This is against Dom Famularo, chief of the Boulder Fire Department, to stop them from wasting water that people are paying for, blah, 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 blah. So they go on this. So they present their case. So at one point, the judge says, Mr. Famularo, actually he said Chief Famularo, is this true in what they're saying? And my father stood up and said, absolutely. We drain the water at 2:00 every morning. So the judge said, please explain why you do this. So when my father explained it to him, the judge said, you mean all this junk gets into the hoses? And my father said, yeah, when it gets into the hoses, you can't really get into the hose to clean it out. You got to cut the hose. That makes the hose shorter and then replug it. He said, so we're losing valuable hose. We're slowing down. And my father said, Your Honor, if I get to a fire and a hose is plugged up and I can't save lives, if you side with them, that death is on your shoulders.
Yeah.
That's what he says to the judge. The judge sits back, said nothing for a few minutes, took his gavel, hit the gavel, and said to the water authority, you will drain the hydrants under the direction of Chief Famularo at whenever he wants it done, and you will find a better draining system to protect us so junk doesn't get in there, effective immediately. And he hits the gavel and it says, and if I see the water company in here again about this challenge, I'm throwing you all in jail. Now get the hell out of my court.
Yes, nice.
So my father's perseverance, his belief, his commitment, his reason to want to save life. This is a volunteer fire department. These guys weren't getting paid.
Yeah, that's right.
That was just one of many stories. So that story to me, was really kind of how we grew up with that. My father's belief in doing what was right was more valuable than what was damaging to maybe himself personally.
Yeah, well, that's a great story. You could almost make a movie about that story. That is such a great story.
And that's a story.
That should be a movie. Yeah.
It's funny that you mentioned that. I'm thinking now as I'm telling the story, that should probably go into Owning Now, because
absolutely
in Owning Now, he owned the moment. He took the moment and just believed in it so much that it was the cause of the bigger picture of saving lives that was his concern, not the water company losing a few.
Exactly. Yeah, that's irrelevant. Yeah, and a lot of people don't know that. And I've spent time living on both coasts, and incidentally, when you live on the coast, oftentimes in larger centers like we have here where I live, we have a predominantly in our little village a volunteer fire department. In Nova Scotia, Canada, and I know that into Connecticut there's actually a museum for volunteer fire departments. There are so many volunteer fire departments that make it even possible to protect some of these villages, because there's just simply not the money to hire that many firefighters.
Absolutely,
and really unsung heroes.
These guys and girls now are true heroes. That word hero gets misused. Yeah. And they really put their. I mean, I can remember stories of Sunday morning being with my dad in the Chiefs car riding around, and all of a sudden a fire started at a hotel, and father immediately called the fire department and parked the car and ran into the hotel and told me, when I bring people out from the front of the hotel, bring them across to the other side of the street. So before any fire trucks are there, my father in his suit is running in, yanking people out. He's handing it to me. I'm 13 years old, and I'm just bringing people to the other side. I said, sit here, run back, and you were involved, and people were coming out. And at one point, this one woman was yelling about her dog. Everybody was accounted for, all the people. My father runs back into this burning hotel in our little town in Baldwin and finds the dog and comes out. His jacket is all shredded with it's smoking, and he carries his dog out, gives it to the woman. The fire trucks pull up. They start putting this out. I am like, what the heck is going on here? We finish it. It's all done. So now several hours later, we go home and we're driving home, and the smell of his, suit that was burned.
Yeah. Very definitive smell.
We walk in the house, and my mother looks at my father and says, "Where the heck have you been?" And my father's just shaking his head. He said, "Dominic will tell you." I said, "Mom, you ran into a fire. It's for a freaking dog." I said, "What am I going to say? Is you pulling people out and dogs?" And so it really was a very powerful image for sure.
Yeah. That's funny you bring up the smell of that. That smell is very, like, I remember my dad, they would have to bring some of their turnout gear to home to wash. And of course now they don't do that because they've since learned there's carcinogens in this stuff. But that smell, I can still smell the smell of his turnout gear when he brought it home for sure.
I was going to allude to the fact that your father was obviously heavily influenced by your grandfather in one way or another. And it all flows downhill, inspiration and motivation.
I've got a cousin. He's a doctor he's a superintendent of schools. He's a doctor of education, and his name is Joe Famularo. And he recently came out with a book called IOU, which is inward, outward, and upward. And it's about just the strength of, running your life like the way you would run a ship. My father's father was a captain of a ship and ran his life like that. Family was his ship. And those strengths and stories that he shares in his book are incredibly powerful when he shares them. And of course, going back from my grandfather and my father's father and my mother's father, who came over from Italy as a tailor. I mean, it really is amazing how these people lived their life and believed in the betterment of their family and sacrificed an incredible amount for their children to have a better life. And then, here I am now, and my livelihood is being a drummer and a musician in my life. My grandfather, before he passed away, he said to me, he says, you have an amazing life that you have as you play the drums, and from the drums, you are the leader of the band. So he understood from the drums, you are the leader of the band. Make sure when you play the drums, you continue to be the leader of the band. So it was really kind of interesting how his perspective is and how he saw things. So it was pretty powerful to see things that are passed down, and it continues like that. He killed him.
Let's take a couple more questions here, and then we'll wind her down. I'm an Italian from Long Island. You did a clinic at Marietta a few years ago. I brought my Italian mama, and the two of you were involved in a deep conversation about eggplant parmigiana. Gracias. No, gracias.
I'm sure that is true. Eggplant parmesan. You bring me a plate of that, and before I eat it, I put my face in it to absorb it through my skin. Holy mackerel! That is better. Marietta, Georgia. I remember Marietta, Georgia, and your mother, bless her soul, I'm sure cooked a great eggplant parmesan. Thank you so much. That's a great memory.
Some of the best conversations are always off topic. We've been talking drums tonight. We've been talking about charities. We've been talking about many different things tonight. And eggplant parmigiana is always a win. There's one last question here, which is pretty important. How does one become a student? And if I may pull up this right here.
I'm assuming this is a student of Dom's.
Oh, a student of me or a student of Sean?
Well, I'll tell you something. I have a website that my team has put together. If they go to that Dom store and click on that Zoom link, a calendar will come up with open dates. And once you sign up for the lesson and make it all happen, will send you a Zoom link, and we'll be in. It'll be on my schedule, and then we'll start talking about what exactly that you're looking for. And we map out a plan. And each of my students, there has to be a plan of what we're trying to achieve. Sometimes they just want to ask questions. Sometimes it might be just one lesson. Sometimes it might be, many lessons. But I like, I feel like I'm still able to share this material that I learned from these great players. And on my, if you go to my website, go to free downloads, if you go to free downloads and then scroll down a little and go to where it says the drum teacher lineage, it's a gray sheet. Keep going down. The next one after this one, right there. Yeah. Click on that if you can open that up.
Oh, it's going to open up a new window. Stand by.
Yeah. And what this is a drum teacher lineage that I came up with that goes back to, when I was younger, Max Roach had performed a concert in New York, and afterwards, all over, I had a chance to speak to him and helping him pack up his drums. And he mentioned, I said, how do you have the level of freedom that you have in expression that you just, whatever you think you can play? And he leaned over to me and he said three names. He said Billy Gladstone, George Lawrence Stone, and Sanford Moeller. If you understand the three movements, Gladstone was about finger technique and finger movement. George Lawrence Stone was about wrist movement, and Moeller was about arm and whip motion. He said, if you understand that, that'll give you the freedom of movement, and your ideas will start to be expressed on the drum set. So I said, wow, this is 1971. I'm 18 years old. I said, well, I want to learn from these guys. How can I contact them? And Max said, too late. They're dead.
Right.
They died in the early 1960s. So then my next question is the question that really impressed Max so much, which he told me. I said, well, since they're gone, who were their best students? And that brought me to Jim Chapin, the best student under Sanford Moeller, Joe Morello, the best student under George Lawrence Stone, and Shelley Manne and Ted Reed and Arnie Lang and Henrietta, best student under Billy Gladstone. And on the bottom is Al Miller, Ronnie Benedict, and my three, and Charlie Perry, my three Long Island teachers, who I didn't know that studied with those guys, but I didn't know to ask them when I was first studying with them. So all that information is what came down to me. And when I look at that chart, gentlemen, which makes me even more driven, everyone on that chart has passed away, of course, except for myself. So I feel the lineage is make sure I can teach as many people this lineage so they can take this on and carry it on and share this in their future.
Interesting. And it will be interesting to see that chart then continued on where now you're at the top, and who carries that message forward.
Well, I tell all these students, once you learn this material, put your picture under mine, and then under your name would say your students. Yeah. So I get people like Klaus Hessler and Stephen Chamberlain and Joe Bergamini and all these phenomenal drummers that have studied with me for years that are continuing on to do their thing, and they are continuing with the legacy of that drum teacher lineage. And I know hopefully when I'm long gone, they'll think of me the way I think of those teachers that I was just so grateful to be lined up with those great minds.
Well, I remember Dom actually I think it was the second time I saw you was there was a year between the second and third time. And actually the third time I saw you, you had just finished your year of you were doing crossover traditional. And then this was like one of your first clinic tours where you were now open-handed.
And I remember that. Yeah.
You had spent like a doing it. So
oh no.
I think you announced at the clinic was that the last time I was in style. So I guess my question, I never got to ask it at the clinic, was what was the biggest challenge you faced during that time of going from the traditional style to the open-handed playing style?
The biggest challenge for me was why I didn't do it sooner. That was the challenge. Why didn't I get to it sooner? Billy Cobham was one that inspired me. It has opened me up dramatically. It's been now 20 years since I've been playing open-handed. I'm still a student of that concept of playing. And I've got ride cymbal to my right and to my left, hi-hat to my right and to my left, and it really has opened up my drum set so I see it differently. And that is extremely exciting because it really is continuing to challenge me and continuing to learn. And my style keeps changing, and I let go of certain patterns that I had played all my life, and I brought in new patterns, and that's a part of growth. That's stepping out of our comfort zone. And when I hear comfort zone, I'm afraid of that. That means the comfort zone means you're content. Right. And once you're content, that means I don't need any more. Why? Because I'm content.
Right.
Yeah. Well, I'm not content. I like to embrace frustration.
Oh my goodness, you're ruining the last question I ask after every stream. You're kind of answering it now, but we'll get to it. Oh my goodness. Okay.
To me, that journey of open-handed was putting me on a challenge of growth and learning that has been exciting. And it's just, guys like Simon Phillips and Billy Cobham and all these great open-handed players, as I mentioned, Klaus Hessler.
Yeah.
They're all inspiring and keeping me going. So it's been a fun journey.
I think I remember when you had just started. Once again, I was at Tom Lee, and you came for a drum festival. We couldn't find a hi-hat stand that went low enough for you because it's very low. And I think we actually ended up taking a hacksaw to like some
I remember
stand.
that.
Yeah.
Do you know how many?
I remember
stories,
that vividly. Yeah.
You know how many stories I've heard of that? What Famularo's on tour, and he needs a shorter hi hat. Do you know how many stores are cutting the hi hat rods because he's open handed now?
on my rider, some people put on they want green M&Ms. I asked for a hacksaw.
That's exactly. Yeah. You successfully ruined at least one hi-hat stand for every clinic that you've done.
For every state and every province, there's one hi-hat stand that's been hacked off.
Oh my goodness, Dom. Absolutely love it.
The first time I did that at a hi-hat, was in September of 2002 in Hamburg, Germany, when I finally decided this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to go open-handed. So when I got to the clinic, they gave me a brand new drum set, and I asked the tech, and I was there with all these incredible famous drummers, and I asked the tech, I said, do you have a hacksaw? He said, like a sort of cut metal? I said, yes. Can you get me one? He goes, absolutely. He goes and gets me one. So I marked the hi-hat rod where I wanted, and I put the hi-hat on the seat, and I started cutting the rod. So the drum tech said to me, he goes, Mr. Famularo, do you realize that's the new hi-hat stand? Okay. And I turned to him and said, not anymore.
I'm surprised you didn't bring like a pipe cutter in your carry-on luggage. It should just be a normality.
Would have been much smarter, yes.
Yeah, put that on your website as a sellable Dom Famularo patented pipe cutter for any of your hardware.
Folds up and goes in your stick bag.
Oh, I love it. Sorry, that made me laugh. That's good.
That's a good story.
Yeah, with respect to time, because it's getting a little late for you out there, I wanted to wind her down here. We really appreciate you hanging out with us for the past couple hours and answering lots of questions and us getting to know you. As usual, I always have one question that I always ask at the end of every stream. And you've probably heard this question because I ask it at the end of every single drum clinic that I go to. I always ask the clinician on stage. So I will ask you this question. Are you ready?
Bring it on.
Here we go. It's very easy to put our heroes on a pedestal, but they seem more human when we see them fail. So if you're on stage, I would ask you as a drummer, can you demonstrate something that you have not perfected so that we can see you fail? And since we're doing it live stream, it can be anything. It doesn't need to be drums. It can be anything. But is there something in your life that you have not perfected that you are working on and challenging yourself to do? And how are you doing that?
Great question, PJ. I fail a lot. And I fail a lot because I believe in embracing risk. I go down paths where I'm not sure I'm capable of being able to accomplish it, but I take on the challenge of doing it. So I fail sometimes in not trusting myself and not trusting my instinct. And I fail sometimes when I take risk and I wasn't totally prepared and it didn't work. But I like failing because in failure, one of the chapters in my book is failure is success and success is failure. So to me, that failure is always the greatest lesson in now what I will not do. So I have failed in trying to write drum books that, totally explain what I was trying to get across and the rewriting process. I have, failed in many occasions in my life. And I hope to continue to fail because that means I'm still continuing to take risks. As my mom once said to me, she said, with all that you're doing with the books you're writing and the traveling, you're getting very close to life's edge. And I looked at my mom and smiled. I said, Mom, when I want to see the edge, I look behind me.
Whoa. Cool. Cool.
Thank you, Dom. Thank you, dude. Really appreciate hanging with you, and that's a great answer. Thank you.
It
Very
is.
cool.
It really is.
Enough inspiration that Wonder Drummer. Wonderful session. To quote Dom, onward and upward.
Absolutely beautiful.
Definitely.
Right. Thank you, Dom. Thank you, Drum Geek. Awesome. Well, let's wind it up here, Sean. Do you want to talk a tiny bit about what's going on with our next stream, and then we'll sign off?
Coming up, we've got Thomas Lang coming up this Saturday at 1 p.m. Pacific, and of course 4 p.m. on the Eastern Standard Time. I know, PJ, you've got a couple of guests in the wings that we're yet to confirm, but
yeah,
very exciting nonetheless. And we have some very interesting things that we're going to be doing for all of drummer kind.
All musician kind.
All musician. And I would imagine, definitely would imagine that the amazing Mrs. Jill Mitchell will be making another appearance, as she is truly amazing spirit and soul. And she had some very interesting questions she brought. And I said, you know what, you need to go on, and her biggest worry was, well, our drummer's going to, are they going to listen to what I have to say? And I mean, she's a vocalist. I mean, she's a high class, like, this woman studied with the coach that taught Christina Aguilera how to sing. So I would say many drummers, I mean, you use your voice all the time, and lots of drummers are vocalists. So yeah, I can definitely say that my wife had a lot of insight that I wouldn't have necessarily asked. So
let's be clear. The people that can speak very honestly about drummers are the other people in the band.
Yes, exactly. If anyone has a good grasp of drummers, it's people that play with them.
That's exactly.
Yeah.
Perfect. So
all right.
Let's shut her up here. Dom, thanks again. Stick around for the old classic back patting directly after this. But I really appreciate you being here.
Thank you guys so much. I wish you guys great success, having had Liberty recently, and please send my best to Thomas Lang and all that you're doing. And guys, stay well, stay safe. And for everyone out there that hears my voice, understand that I really believe you are the next generation to be the great leaders of our community. I believe in you. I think you have great potential. And because I believe in you, I ask only one thing. Prove me right. Prove me right.